Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Red Leaf Card, your home for Canadian soccer news and views. My name is Jacob, and we're going to be talking about the Canadian Premier League's playoffs of the first match and the second round, and also the semifinals with Calgary FC and Forge FC, and the Pacific FC versus Halifax Wanderers, and and also York United with Pacific FC. And also, we're going to be reacting to the 2024 Concacaf Champions Cup and also promotion relegation being into League1 Ontario for their upcoming season. And to talk about this is Jason Whissell, and say hello to it.
Jacob, how you doing today?
Great. But to be honest, to talk about it, the fixtures rundown, it says it all. If you were talking about the Canadian national team, came down in a friendly match in Japan, losing to them 4-1.
That's going to be a bit of a tough hit, and it's unfortunate, but I mean, it is just a friendly. It's demoralizing. You have to think, losing 4-1, but I mean, it's not like they lost to a team that wasn't good. Japan obviously is, they're always going to be tough competition, but a 4-1 loss, that's not going to bring up your morale going into, the stretch that leads towards the World Cup.
Not just that, it's just I agree, it's a friendly match. Japan has been doing so well in their friendlies, and they beat Germany. Also, that's a wow factor. And just for Canadians out there, everyone's going to be now focusing on the Concacaf Nations League and see how they go. And it'll be in Canada, in Toronto, Ontario, something to have a great feeling about this. I see some positives and negatives coming down. But now we could talk about the Canadian Premier League of, by far, how the playoffs went.
Well, I mean, if you had asked me, and you did ask me, at the beginning of the season, if we were going to be looking at a team like York in the mix as far as the playoffs go, this is a team that really had a wonderful turnaround mid-season. They started off poorly. There's zero question about that. But look at what they did, and now they're in the dance, and this is going to be very, very interesting for them.
Yeah, and this is something I, from the beginning of the prediction of the regular season, I did not know how Atletico Ottawa was at the start. I thought they were, from the beginning, I picked Atletico Ottawa most likely to struggle, not be in first place, because their roster, I didn't, because you had Atletico Ottawa scrambling in the transfer market. You could not even think how did management go, and look how they did. They suffered so much in the regular season, and you look at how Atletico Ottawa feels like losing to York United. That was a key match to even clinch to the playoffs. I just have to say this, but I struggled so hard to predict York United and Atletico Ottawa to take that fifth spot. And no question about it, I was right that Valor FC, Vancouver FC, and the other ones, I always picked Pacific FC would be in it, Calgary FC would be in it, Forge FC. We all know that they will be in the playoffs. But I did have to say this. I kind of predicted this in this regular season. It was no question about it. It was always going to be the Ontario teams. And I have to give both teams credits of how they went.
I mean, the thing with Ottawa is that this is the team that, of course, had the biggest drop from last year. And yes, did they struggle? Absolutely. Yes. Did they, have a lot of questions and a lot of holes to fill going into the season? Yes, of course they did. I don't know, and I predicted Ottawa to do much better than they did. And clearly I was wrong. I have no problem saying that. But the thing is, we knew Vancouver was not going to be in the mix. We knew Valor was more than likely not going to be into the mix. And when you consider just how much York struggled at the beginning, especially with a lot of questions about ownership, and it wasn't looking good. It was not looking good. Pacific had very much a yo-yo season where it wasn't that long ago where we were talking about them, topping the table and dominating. Then all of a sudden, it's near the end. And it's like, well, they just made it in. Like, whew. Yes, Cavalry and Forge, they were the easy bets. Halifax, coming in and doing pretty well and getting a decent spot for themselves. Kudos to them for that. But now you're looking at this and going, who moves forward? And this is going to be interesting because that first match of Pacific versus York, that's going to be a doozy of a match.
Yeah. And right now, I let it go out of them. Right now, they could just laugh at York United not even winning that round. Pacific FC wins in the dying moment 1-0 with former Ottawa Fury FC player Reed.
Well, I mean, if we get Pacific and York in that first match, right? It's going to be interesting to see who moves forward in that one. And of course, we've got the new playoff format as well, right? Now we've got that extra team in there. Now we've got that extra round, like those extra chances. So,
yeah, it's kind of confusing when you're with the whole first round, the first team versus second place team. That winning team goes to the finals. No question.
Oh yeah, and that match, Cavalry versus Forge. This was more than likely going to be the match of most people would have predicted for a final. And now you're going to get that right off the bat. It's not like you're not going to have a chance at that matchup for the final, because of course, whoever loses out of that initial matchup, they're going to have a chance to redeem themselves and still make it to the final. Cavalry and Forge for the whole kit and caboodle, but also for a step into the Concacaf Champions Cup. And that's going to be very, very interesting. Yes, Cavalry already has their ticket punched for topping the table.
Yeah.
But I wonder, you almost have to wonder, right? If Cavalry wins against Forge in their first match and they make it to the final, where's the incentive? Obviously, to win it all, of course, it's going to be the incentive. But if the eyes are on CONCACAF, doesn't matter who wins then, because the other team's going to go in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, it's a fight between, Forge, Halifax, Pacific, and York for that last spot into the CONCACAF Champions Cup.
Yeah, and Calgary FC losing to Forge FC.
Mm-hmm.
And now gets their second chance to that. So final score: Calgary FC 1, Forge FC 2. So give credit a lot. That was a good match. That was a good match for Calgary FC trying to get back in that match, but didn't survive that. But right now, we could go to Pacific FC. Moving on to the Atlantic, Halifax Wanderers. Kind of a lot of drama in the ending. Final score goes to Pacific FC winning 1-0. And to be honest, that was one of the best matches I've seen so far in this playoffs.
And now you've got Pacific going against Cavalry.
Yeah.
With a team that they have not beaten at all. You take a look at the last scores, right? October 7th, Cavalry 3-0 over Pacific. August 27th, Cavalry 1-0 over Pacific. July 8th, Cavalry 2-1 over Pacific. Like, it's been, you have to go back to April 23rd for a 1-1 draw. And it doesn't bode well for Pacific at all. But the interesting thing here is going to be that extra motivation. If Pacific wins somehow against Cavalry, there's a shot at Concacaf.
Yeah.
Right?
But if Cavalry wins,
if Cavalry wins, then
Forge FC automatic.
Which, more often than not, if anyone's putting money down on that, that's pretty much how it's going to play out. But I've been so wrong on so many predictions this year that I don't ever take my bet on anything. But you have to think that there's the incentive for Pacific right there. Cavalry's already lost. Cavalry's already, now fighting to get back into it, but there's really no incentive. They're going to CONCACAF no matter what. The incentive is winning this tournament. The incentive is winning the CPL Championship.
So, what do you think this goes down to for Pacific FC versus Cavalry FC?
I think it comes down to Pacific's goaltending, which at the beginning of the season was its strongest suit. And now it's probably their biggest question mark at this point. And they've done well in the playoffs so far. They have. But you're now going up against Cavalry. And that's not an easy task. And they're going to have to do something that they haven't done all season. And that's win. Win against Cavalry. And I don't think Cavalry is going to give them that opportunity.
Yeah.
It is David versus Goliath at this point.
Yeah, and you have to have your back positions ready for this match. You need that defensive mindset to win this match, and also be ready for trying to make goals. And it's always, what is the right strategy for this match? And right now you have Emil Gazdov is actually doing well for Pacific FC. He's doing really well just from York United.
And that's the thing. Gazdov at the beginning of the season was the engine that was driving the bus. And I think he could be the X factor in this game. If Pacific comes in with a decent defensive plan to shut down Cavalry, don't let them have those chances. Don't let them anywhere near the net. And I think if they can bog it down midfield and wait for those breaks, then there's a possibility. If they come at this with a very defensive mindset, there's that possibility. Score for show, defense for dough. And if they can shut down Cavalry and not give them the opportunities, then they do. They have that chance. But I don't think they do. I don't think they have that ability to dominate Cavalry. But I've been wrong. The so far the playoffs, it's been 1-0 games, right? So it's been clean sheets for Pacific. It's been solid defense. But to go from York to Halifax to Cavalry, it's a different beast that you're playing against. And it could go either way. But the other thing too is, even if they make it past Cavalry to face off against Forge has beaten them 3 games out of 4 this season. So you go from 2 teams who were middle of the pack along with Pacific, and now you're going up against, for lack of a better term, the titans of the league.
Yeah. And right now, all the Canadian Premier League fans just waiting that finals, not just for that match. They're just waiting for that new trophy, the North Star Cup, to be revealed. And right now, most likely, see the third Canadian team to be in the Concacaf Champions Cup. It's kind of what we would talk about of the new format for the Concacaf Champions Cup with 27 teams.
Almost an entire new. It is. It's an entire new round added to the championship. You've gone from 4 rounds now to 5 rounds, with some teams getting the automatic advance. Obviously, Miami, they've already made it to the round of 16, by being the League's Cup champions. Pachuca being your League MX champions, they're already going to make it to that second round, that round of 16. But then you have Vancouver, who's already punched their ticket by winning the Canadian champions. Cavalry, as we mentioned, they've punched their ticket to the first round as well. Independiente is in. Real Esteli is in. Alulense Herdaño. Aluense, thank you. Again, I'm an idiot. So never take my pronunciations as anything close to what it should be. Nashville, Philadelphia, UANL, Toluca, Guadalajara, Monterrey, America, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Orlando, and Houston have already punched their ticket into this tournament.
Funny thing about the Houston Dynamo FC, they were automatically they were in because they were the runner-ups of the U.S. Open, of the U.S. Open Cup. That's a shocker.
And the thing is, there's still opportunities to make it past that opening round and into the round of 16. Canadian fans will appreciate this. If Vancouver wins the MLS Cup, then Montreal gets to qualify because they were the runners-up in the Canadian Championship. So there is still the possibility of even...
No, I guess I would agree with them. Or maybe it would be Vancouver Whitecaps actually moving up.
Yeah, they would go straight to the round of 16 if they win the MLS Cup.
And Club de Foot Montreal would take the Canadian Championship round of 16, round 1.
Exactly. So there's still a lot of questions too. I mean, obviously, whoever wins the Canadian Premier League Championship, that's going to be, that's still up in the air, right? Which, going back to that, right? Cavalry still has to beat Pacific to get, to that final. If Pacific wins, just hypothetically speaking, if Pacific wins, is this an absolute failure for Cavalry to take the table, to be the regular season champion, and then to lose to Forge right away? Okay, it happens. Forge is a very good team. There's zero denying this. But then to not even make it to the final? Would you consider that, on Cavalry side, a major missed opportunity?
I would say it would be yes and no, because you already qualified to the Concacaf Champions Cup for a reason of winning the regular season, and there's been so many teams that were runner-ups for the finals. You had Halifax Wanderers. You had always for example, Atletico Ottawa in 2022, and more doubt. I would always say the regular season from 2022, 2021, or 2019 still doesn't automatically put you in the CONCACAF champions.
No.
It doesn't. But I would always say, I would have to give credit of those teams doing really well. But always have your head up, because there's always another season that this team would win it and qualify. But we've seen more Forge have successfully been going to, as noticed, the CONCACAF League no longer, and we're the first Canadian Premier League team to make the Concacaf Champions League.
Well, the other thing too with Forge is that they've proven time and again that all you have to do is get to the dance and you have a chance. All the best advice rhymes. But that's the thing. They know whether they take the table or not. All you have to do is get to the playoffs, and you have that ability to win it all. With Cavalry, this isn't the first time that they've, taken the table and then failed to win it all. Forge is a team with a mindset built for the playoffs. And that any league, any sport, it's been proven that all you have to do is make it to the playoffs. If you can, you have a chance.
Yeah.
And now, Forge already did what they needed to do. Get to the final. Cavalry, they still need to overcome Pacific, who are right now surging. And as much as we sat there and said, Pacific hasn't beaten Cavalry all year. Tied once, but they haven't beat them all year. They haven't,
It just has to lead how it goes into the playoffs.
Regular season at this stage of the game does not mean a thing. Forge has proven it. Pacific could prove it. And I would not be surprised if Pacific can get past Cavalry, which is going to make that final even more intense, because then it's not just the championship, it's CONCACAF for whoever wins. There's no runner-up prize at that point. If Cavalry beats Pacific, then yeah, it doesn't matter. Both those teams are going to go, Forge and Cavalry. And yes, they're probably the two best teams to represent the CPL.
Yeah.
But part of me wants to see Pacific in there, and at least in the mix, at least have a chance.
Yeah, at least they made the CONCACAF League.
Right.
And like we go also like this one, I always criticize about the CONCACAF Champions Cup of their new format.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a lot of people also criticize it. And like, for example, I have always said that every league, every country that has a soccer league and they have actually won the league or any domestic cup should put them in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But now their new format is saying, oh, you have to go to the Caribbean Cup, you have to go to Central American Cup to make it to the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Like, I think it doesn't make sense to make a stage that is a cup to make it to a higher stage of the CONCACAF Champions Cup.
I'm going to argue that one. I am going to argue that one, and it's completely based on exactly what we were just talking about, right? You can have a team that absolutely dominates during the regular season and then tanks, or at least doesn't meet up to the expectations in the playoffs, right? Let's take the CPL for argument's sake, okay? Cavalry wins the regular season. Yes, that definitely deserves to be recognized, and I think Cavalry has, regardless of what happens against Pacific and eventually against Forge, Cavalry has definitely earned their spot. But winning the championship is a lot harder than winning the table. And I think that, winning those tournaments should absolutely give you a chance to bypass and go right to the round of 16. Obviously, the MLS Cup, the Central America Cup, these are the bigger tournaments. Those are the ones that definitely need to be rewarded because it's a much bigger playing field. I agree that the CPL playoff champion shouldn't be automatically put into the round of 16.
Yeah.
I get that because it's a much smaller playing field. It's a smaller league, not as many teams, and when you think about MLS, You're talking way more competition than you are with the CPL. So obviously the MLS Cup winners should get that pass into the round of 16. I don't disagree with more teams getting in, though.
Or more leagues.
Exactly, because it's one of those things where the more teams, the wider the appeal, the more chance of more eyes and this tournament becoming much more celebrated.
Just like the UEFA Champions League.
Exactly.
You brought in all these European leagues, and you have a stage of qualifying rounds. Why does CONCACAF need like a Central American Cup? Oh, to qualify to go to the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Why need another domestic cup for the Caribbean, the Central American? I disagree so much on this one. Why not just have all the leagues come in to represent for it and just put them in? Oh, this one, this league would be on this round, this one, and you have major leagues and these bigger leagues. Oh, they go to the group stage. They start from group stage.
I think part of the plan there, and just let me kind of talk through this mindset for a second here. Let's take a look at the FA Cup for a second. You have so many English teams involved. But the thing is...
And Welsh.
Exactly. But the thing is, you don't have as far to travel for these tournaments, right? It's a lot of teams in a very small area, relatively speaking, in comparison to North and South America. But here, you have to almost narrow it down regionally so you don't have as many teams having to travel. Obviously, as, gas prices go up, plane travel costs go up. Like, the cost of going to these tournaments and competing and whatnot, yes, is going to be covered a lot by the money that teams make from playoffs and postseason games, and that extra bonus gate receipt that they get for doing so well. But for someone to win the Central American Cup, if you have too many of those leagues, maybe not all of them can afford to make the travel based on the regionality of who their opponent's going to be. Right? So it's not like, it should be regionally narrowed down, I think. And that's not a bad thing. I get that sometimes you're not going to maybe always get the teams that you think we're going to make it in there, and at least it gives the opportunity for runners up to make it to the first round and not bypass and go to the round of 16. But still, I think regionality plays a factor in it based on the size of the playing field. And I mean that by North America and South America, and having to go from place to place. So it's not like the FA Cup. The FA Cup, it's a much shorter distance from round to round as opposed to here.
Yeah, where you would say about like a province, for example.
Yeah, and the thing is too, a lot of these places are
like the Canadian Championship.
Yeah, and there's the thing, right? Like, for a team like Forge or Cavalry, right, or Pacific, there's always that outside chance that it could be Pacific. But regardless of, they're not necessarily going to have the wealth of a team like a St. Louis or a Cincinnati or any of the other major Liga MX teams, right? So for them to participate, that's a cost. It is a cost. It's a great thing to be able to be in the tournament, to make it that far, but there's still a cost to it.
Yeah, and saying the word of like the province, for example, League1 Ontario getting promotion and relegation for their upcoming season. And right now, we're seeing they have who qualified for the Premier round, tier. Alliance United FC, Oakville Blue Devils FC, Burlington SC, Electric City FC from Peterborough, Guelph United FC, Hamilton United, North Toronto Nitros, Pro Stars FC from Brampton, Scorosope FC from Milton Vaughan, Sigma FC from Mississauga, Simcoe County Rovers from Barrie, Vaughan, Missouri. League 1 Championship, BVB Academy, Waterloo, Derby FC from Whitby, FC London, Master Football from Scarborough, North Mississauga SC, St. Charles Roma Wolves, Unionville Malacan SC, Windsor City FC, Woodbridge Strikers, and now League 2 Ontario. With right now have been announced 3 teams, and the 3 teams would be Dutch Connections FC, which is located in Scarborough, Rush Canada, located in Oakville, and Sudbury Cyclones from Sudbury. That's a long way to travel.
Oh, I've done that trip from Sudbury to Toronto. It's not a bad trip, but it's a bit of a distance. But I mean, the thing here is that for the most part, I think geographically, I think Peterborough is the furthest east that you're going. And then yes, of course, you're going to have Sudbury as being one of the most westernly points that you're dealing with here. I don't know how I feel about relegation and promotion. I don't. And I say that because you have at this point 21 teams coming out of last year, and you're separating that down to a bit of a smaller tiered system. Part of the problem with when you have too much sports is that there's just not enough sponsorship money to go around.
Or too much teams.
Yeah, you dilute the playing, the players available to join. I like the fact that for the most part, the teams are fairly centralized as far as their travel goes. Like I don't think it makes sense for a city like Ottawa to be involved in this.
Like we've heard about Ottawa South United actually competed in League 1 Ontario. Decided we're going to League 1 Quebec because of travel.
Yeah,
and feels like I also feel sorry about Ottawa South United, that they only made 9 wins. That's what I've heard. I keep on forgetting from the last 4 seasons. I think last 4 seasons when they decided to go to League 1 Quebec. That's not 9 wins. That's not a good start.
No, it's not. And the thing is, relegation is good for new teams, I think, in that, you have that ability to work your way up.
Yeah.
And for the teams that are that are able to work their way up to the next grouping, the next that next level, that's great. That's absolutely great for that team. But if you're a fan of a, for lack of a better term, semi-pro league, and your team is relegated, it can be a bit demoralizing for some of these players.
Yeah.
I mean,
even the owners.
Well, exactly. Right? Because at some point they need to go to, the local businesses and say, we need to sell tickets, right? We need to find a way to help keep this thing going.
Yeah, at least I've seen there's a lot of support with Guelph. There's a lot of support with Electric City FC.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are like that went a huge popularity when that happened, and Simcoe also had a huge popularity when they were established, and you have former Canadian players actually running it.
Yeah. Like some teams are going to have the resources. Like a Vaughan Azzurri is never not going to be, without their resources. They're a good, strong team. Seemingly always have been. They have played in, the Canadian Championship. Like there's visibility, and when there's visibility, there's attention drawn. Now that being said, if you expand the Canadian Championship by a few teams, so not only do you have the top tier league champion, right? So in this case, Simcoe County.
Yeah.
But if you also include the tier 2 champion into the Canadian Championship as well, then that legitimizes that second tier. And even though they may not have any hope of chance of actually winning it all, again, as we've mentioned earlier, all you have to do is get to the dance and you have a chance.
Well, Simcoe County actually qualified to the 2024 Canadian Championship.
No, but that's what I'm saying, right? So if you take a look now going ahead, obviously you have to wait a year because you have to wait, to have your tier 2 champion, if you will. But let's just say for argument's sake,
tier 3.
Well, exactly, right. But let's say for argument's sake, Woodbridge wins that lower tier championship, right?
They're the League 1 championship.
Yeah, they're the best team in the teams that were relegated this year.
They get promoted.
Exactly, right? Put them in the Canadian Championship as well. Have that second tier mean something. Have them have that ability to, to expand, to grow, and give them that little something extra to fight for.
Like I thought that, I thought about this also, like for the League 1 Premier. Or maybe bring all the teams that are in League 1 Canada. That could have been a better idea to bring some competition in the Canadian Championship. Bring all the Canadian teams.
Oh, absolutely! Like
it's just like
the FA Cup style, but for Canada. But again, we fall into the same situation where travel costs money.
Yeah.
Again, you can have, a really small team, in the FA Cup go and play against Tottenham or Man U or Man City, and it may not be that far a drive.
Yeah, right now, like the Canadian Championship, they actually decided East versus West. At this point, they decided to, hey, we're gonna try to lower the travel costs, and decide the West teams are gonna be versus the East teams, and it'll just lead to the finals. At this point, that's what was their new structure for the Canadian Championship, and that's how it was.
I mean, I think too, there's an argument to be made for neutral ground tournaments. If you were to do a neutral ground League 1 Canada tournament, then I think that makes sense.
Well, you mean like the Cup League Quebec?
No, but what I'm saying is, you have your Quebec champions, you have your Ontario champions, you have your BC champions, and they play in a tournament on somewhere in the middle of Canada as neutral ground. But that's also a decent way to help set up a League 1 Prairies / Central Canada. But again, that's just me.
Like the Interprovincial Cup?
Yeah.
Which the women's play. So, yeah. about, since that there's 3 teams been announced in Scarborough, Oakville, and Sudbury, which city should have a team?
Well, as mentioned, I don't think you want to go too far outside of that Southern Ontario kind of feel. Um, Ottawa doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Peterborough is maybe about as far east as you want to go. Although you could, in essence, make an argument for a Belleville.
And maybe Kingston,
Maybe
if
Kingston.
if they get Belleville.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, yes, you do have a team down in St. Catharines, but you could also make an argument for Niagara Falls. But I think St. Catharines also kind of covers that area as well. So it's, you want to have it in an area that kind of, fits everything.
And it's some thing that I think Sudbury, if they want to have a better travel, maybe get a team from North Bay.
That's a possibility. Like, I don't know if you want to go too far north either. Like Thunder Bay might be a stretch because then you're talking like
No,
an 8-hour drive.
I said North Bay,
Yeah,
not Thunder Bay.
no, but what I'm saying is you don't want to go too far outside of where everyone else is. That's what I'm saying. Like Thunder Bay doesn't make sense because again of travel costs.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a day, right? If you're traveling by bus, right, by team bus, that's a day. So again, a Niagara Falls makes sense. Belleville, a Kingston, those make sense because they're relatively easily travelable. Yes, it's gonna be a little bit longer going all the way to a Sudbury, but still, I think there is some room to grow. But you also want to make sure that it's in a community that can handle it. Like a Lindsay, Ontario would be fine distance wise, but I don't know if population wise it would work. But I think there's room. Like Perth is decently close to Peterborough, but Perth again, a smaller town, a smaller community. Yeah, there might be room to play out there, but I don't think, if you spread it out too thin, you're going to find yourself hurting for the ticket sales wherever you are. But maybe again, maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe it is those small communities that embrace those teams and be able to help drive the sales that they need. But I mean, you want to keep it, I do think, in that Southern Ontario, Sudbury to Peterborough kind of range and in and around there.
Or so many academies in League1 Ontario. And also, they're also going to bring in reserve teams in League 2 Ontario, so that's also a good thing.
Yeah, I think, in all honesty, Belleville is probably the best option, but maybe a Trenton as well.
Yeah, and also, I feel sorry about Pickering FC now losing their license for their senior team. That's a big loss for Pickering FC. And as noticed, they used to have a team in King, Ontario. They used to have, as I mentioned, Kingston, Ontario, Aurora.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a good one if they had one.
Yeah, because you can tap into that Aurora Newmarket area for sure.
Yeah. So maybe they'll try to get some more teams in the Greater Toronto area, and
or at least travelable enough
that are travel. Yeah.
It's very interesting too because I'm in a band and we have traveled around enough places as far as Southern Ontario goes in playing around, and you see the communities that have the population in order to be able to host those kind of things. Having played in Guelph, having played in Kitchener, having played up north in Barrie and in Collingwood, and you can see that the communities that have the population in order to be able to handle something like that. Newmarket Aurora, I think, is actually a great choice because you have enough population up there. You have enough, you have enough big houses up there to know that there's money up there in order to be able to handle that. You mentioned King, Ontario, like that kind of King City area. And it's a smaller area, but there is money up there, which is, as much as this is a semi-pro league and it's not the driving factor of things, you still need the people out there in order to be able to go. Again, Aurora, Newmarket, absolutely. But you don't want to uber concentrate as far as teams in a small area, right? That's why I say Niagara Falls maybe not so much, because you have St. Catharines, and that's really like maybe a 15-20 minute drive depending on weekend traffic and which routes you take. It's close enough. And Niagara Falls, of course, being a very touristy area and not exactly the most regular, not the population of Niagara Falls grows by season because of the nature of the city. It's a tourist town. St. Catharines does make more sense.
Yeah. Not just that, when 2024 starts, and there is going to be League1 Alberta to have their inaugural season, regular season. They just did their exhibition, and now they're also looking for more teams to be in there. That's going to be 5 teams already right there. And we could bring up that they've already announced 3 teams in that's League 2 Ontario. The whole big market in League1 Alberta, it's always been Edmonton and in Calgary. You don't usually see that much in League1 Alberta, the Albertan market out of those cities.
Yeah, I mean, right now, League1 Alberta, you're looking at Edmonton BTB, Calgary Foothills, Cavalry FC under 21, Edmonton Scottish, and St. Albert Impact. And again, with Alberta, you're dealing with a bit of a smaller footprint as far as geography goes. So there's that possibility. But to that token, you also have your population very, very, almost clustered into the Edmonton and Calgary areas. And you have to think that you're going to have to tap some of those smaller markets in order to be able to expand Alberta. But I think it's smart to start with a smaller league. But it's going to be interesting to see where they decide to expand to.
Yeah. So 2024 regular season for League1 Alberta, and hoping we see some announcements for League1 Alberta and see how the promotion relegation system goes for the League1 Ontario. And that's full time of the Red Leaf Card. I'm your host, Jacob, subbing out.